There's nothing like opening up a live beehive, watching bees hatch and communicate with each other, and harvesting honey from your very own backyard. But unfortunately, beekeeping is not an easy hobby to learn about, get into, be successful in. So let's simplify the process to keeping bees so it's easy to understand, and we'll make it a whole lot more fun and a more enjoyable process. In this video, I am going to explain the parts to a Langstroth style beehive, which is the most commonly used beehive in the United States, as well as some of the other equipment that you're going to need when you get started, so that when you are done watching this short video, you will be ready to go straight to any number of beekeeping supply sites and buy what you need. Before you buy your beehive, you're going to need somewhere to put your beehive so that it is not sitting flat on the grass or the ground. Even if you have concrete or gravel, I recommend elevating your beehive a good 18 inches, not only to save your back so you're not hunched over looking into the beehive, but also in case there is a lot of rain, flooding, snow, so things don't get in. 18 inches is a good height to prevent skunks from coming into your hive in the evening and other little critters from making their way into a nice warm spot. Here I have 2 pallets stacked up, and that's what I have all my beehives on. I just have pallets on the ground, and a commercial apiary I worked for had thousands of hives. They just had 4 beehives to a pallet. You can buy hive stands from beekeeping supply sites. You can lay down bricks. You can put cinder blocks down. 2 tips I have for you is, 1, if you have bears in your area, I recommend putting up an electric fence around your hives before a bear finds your hives. Once they have attacked a hive and know that there is sweet honey inside, it will be really hard to keep them away even with an electric fence. My other tip is to make sure your hive is level. When your hive is level and the bees build honeycomb inside the hive, the honeycomb will be in a nice straight row inside your frames, and everything will be easy to inspect. This is called your bottom board. This is a solid bottom because it has no screen on it. And this is the first part of the beehive that you're going to lay on whatever you're using as your beehive stand. Now, one thing you might sometimes put on your bottom board that you should really purchase is an entrance reducer. And so instead of this large space for the bees to get in and out, they might have just this tiny little space, or you can rotate it and have this space. The next part of the beehive is the brood box. It is 9 5/8 of an inch tall. It is sometimes referred to as the brood chamber or the deep box. You're going to want 2 of these. And the brood box is where the queen lays the eggs. And so these baby bees, before they've hatched, is what we call brood. And the brood is usually in the lower section of the hive, and the upper section is the honey. So you'll see that this box is empty. It's just got 4 sides, and that's it. So when you put your brood box right here on your bottom board, what you also want to do is fill it up with frames. This is a frame, and it is just how it sounds, a frame. What you do is you either are buying a 10 frame or an 8 frame box. Now that will decide how wide your box is. A 10 frame box is the standard for most commercial apiaries, but if you are looking for your boxes to weigh a little bit less, then you're going to want to go in with an 8 frame box. And usually what you do is you put foundation inside your frames. Foundation can be plastic, can be beeswax, or you can use no foundation at all. What the commonly used is plastic beeswax coated foundation. Foundation comes in different colors. Often the black is used for the brood boxes because it makes it easier to spot eggs. Yellow foundation is often the color used in the honey frames. You will also see green foundation, and that lets you know that that is for the drones, which is the male bees. And the drones hatch from honeycomb that's a little bit bigger. So these sizes are a little bit bigger too. If you are finding yourself getting a little bit overwhelmed by all the things you need to learn and buy in order to keep bees, check out my online beekeeping course at beekeepingmadesimple.com. There's a link below along with a special coupon code for you guys that are viewing this video. And in it I have all the content you need to know all in one spot, plus it includes mentorship so you can email me whenever you want to with a question. The second deep box is just like the first, and it is additional space for the queen to lay. Next we have the queen excluder. The holes in the queen excluder are big enough that worker bees can fit through them, but too small for most queen bees to get through. And you would put your queen excluder here on top of your second deep box. I do not use queen excluders almost ever, and I will get into when to use your queen excluder so that it doesn't turn into a honey excluder, as what happens with a lot of beginner beekeepers. Next we have our honey super or honey box or shallow, whatever you want to call it. It's just identical to your deep boxes, but not as tall. There are two different sizes to this honey super. You can have a shallow or a medium. And the only difference is 1 inch. So if you're looking to keep the amount of weight on your beehive to a minimum, then you're going to want the shallow honey box. And those, when they're full, are like 35 to 45 pounds. You get a medium box, it's about 1 inch taller, and that box is going to be more like 45-ish, 50 pounds. Finally, you have your inner cover. Inner cover kind of looks like a lid, but has a hole in the middle and a notch right here. You put this on top of your beehive, on top of the very uppermost box, however many boxes there are, and it can make taking the outer cover off a lot easier. It can help with insulation. They say it helps with humidity control. Where I am, where it's really humid, is not helping. It can help with feeding the bees, and there's a little notch here. So it gives the bees an upper entrance, which is very helpful in the wintertime. And the last part of the beehive is the lid, or this is referred to as an outer cover. There are also migratory lids. You don't need to worry about those. Those are more so for commercial beekeepers. Down below, I have a link to my free Getting Started Keeping Bees PDF, and in there is a hive diagram plus a checklist with all of this equipment listed. It makes it really easy when buying your equipment. In addition to the beehive, you're going to want to get one smoker. I actually went my first couple years without a smoker. I just use a spray bottle full of sugar syrup. Don't recommend it. Get yourself a smoker. You're going to want a hive tool. There's 3 different kinds of hive tools you'll see. One is a J-hook or hobby hive tool. That one's my preference. This is more of the general commercial beekeeper hive tool, which my boss, when I worked for a commercial apiary, made me use. And then there's one with all of these funny looking pointy things on it. Never even tried that one. It seemed a little unnecessary and like a torture device. I recommend getting like a bunch of hive tools. Get a couple, like 3 or 4. This is an mouse guard. This is put over the entrance. You can make a mouse guard kind of easily, and it's not something you really need until it starts to get cooler out in the late summer, early fall. You're also going to want a feeder. Feeders come in a variety of shapes and sizes and price points. I recommend a nice feeder that is a wooden box like this one, because a lot of the cheaper feeders you will find hundreds of drowned bees inside it, which is an awful thing to see. You're going to want to get a pair of nice beekeeping gloves as well as your veil. So you can get a veil which just covers your head, or you can get a veil connected to a jacket, or you can get a full beekeeping suit. It's up to you, your preference. I will say I hate the jackets with a passion. They are the worst. The veils are great because when it gets really hot out, you can just wear a long sleeve shirt or a short sleeve shirt, shorts, pants, whatever you want, and just put the veil on top. With the jacket, I've found that when you bend over, bees actually will fly up your back, and then they are in your jacket. And they somehow make their way up to your face and start buzzing around near your face, which is a really terrifying thing the first few times it happens. The suit is what people usually get, and I really recommend, this is a big tip I have for a lot of beginners, hold off on the suit. When you first get your beehive, the hive is really small, and you're really not going to need a suit. You're not going to have to worry too much with getting stung a lot. So just get a veil with the helmet, and if you find that your bees are stinging you a lot, or you have a lot of anxiety when opening your hive, get the suit. But the suit is really hot, and if your bees aren't very aggressive, which often they're not, then a suit is just really unnecessary and a huge expense, and it's going to make you just sweat your butt off. Let's do a quick review of all the parts of the beehive that you're going to need to buy. For each colony of bees you purchase, you're going to want one full beehive. This beehive should include one bottom board, 2 deep boxes, 2 honey boxes, 1 inner cover, 1 outer cover, 1 queen excluder, 1 entrance reducer, frames and foundation for your deep boxes and your honey supers. If you're buying 10 frame boxes, you're going to want 20 deep frames, plus 20 sheets of foundation for these deep frames. These should be 9 1/8 of an inch tall. If you have an 8-frame box, then you're going to buy 16 frames and 16 sheets of foundation. For your 2 honey boxes, if you buy an 8-frame box, you're going to want 16 frames and 16 sheets of foundation for your box. If you have a 10-frame box, then you're going to want 20 frames and 20 sheets of foundation. How tall the foundation is going to vary depending on whether you choose to buy a shallow box or a medium box. You're also going to want 1 smoker, 1 hive tool, 1 veil, and sting-resistant gloves. You'll see that most beekeeping supply sites sell beekeeping kits, and this makes buying your equipment a lot easier, but they usually just sell you 2 deep boxes and 1 honey box. I recommend just buying a second honey box in case you need it. Once you get your beehive, you're going to want to assemble everything. If you need tips and assistance on how to do that, check out my video below on how to assemble a beehive. And then you want to cover it with some kind of exterior coating to protect it from the elements. You can use any kind of outdoor house paint, or you can purchase these beeswax coated beehives from Galena Farms. Use coupon code Larissa for 5% off. Then what you're going to do is order your bees. And when you pick up your bees, you're going to bring them to your beehive. So you're going to have your hive stand, whatever you choose it to be, as long as it's level. You're going to have 1 deep box, and you're going to fill it up with frames. And you're going to put your bees inside. If you purchased a feeder, then you can put it on top of this box, or if it's the feeder that goes inside the box, then put it in there. If your bees came with a can full of syrup, then give it a little shake. If it feels like there's still some liquid in there, then you can put your inner cover on, and instead of a feeder, you can put your can upside down so the holes are facing downward, and put it over the hole in your inner cover so the bees can access the syrup dripping out of the can. Then you're going to want to take an empty box, it doesn't matter which one, but just put it right over the can so to protect it from falling over, and then you're going to put your cover on top. You're going to check your bees once every week, every other week. You don't have to check them every week, but I like to recommend to beginners to check them every week, because this is a great time to get used to opening up a beehive and being around your bees while the hive is small. Get used to spotting the queen and looking for eggs while there's not a ton of bees all over the place. You have like maybe 10,000 bees. Later on in the summer, you're going to have 30 or 40,000 bees in your hive, and it's going to be much harder to spot these things. So you're going to keep checking on your bees, and you're going to see that bees are going to build honeycomb off of the foundation. Once only 2 or 3 frames in this first box still don't have any honeycomb and are empty, but the other frames do have honeycomb, you can add your second box. So you're going to take your lid off, you're going to take your feeder off. You probably had to continue to keep feeding them for the last month or so. Take your inner cover off. You're going to take your second deep box, you're going to put it on top of the first, and you're going to fill it completely up with frames. Then you are going to put your inner cover back on and your lid back on. By this point that this box is mostly full, you should not have to feed your bees anymore. They should be gathering ample, healthy nectar from flowers and not need the sugar syrup that you've been feeding them. Then over the course of the next few weeks, you're going to be inspecting your hive, and the bees are going to move up to the second box and start to build honeycomb on these frames. And just like the first box, once you start to see that most of the frames are full and only 2 or 3 frames don't have any honeycomb on them, that's when you can start to add your honey boxes. So you're again going to take the inner and outer covers off and add your honey box. This could be a shallow or a medium, but it's not going to be anywhere near as tall as your deep boxes. You're going to fill this box up with its frames, 10 frames for a 10-frame box, 8 frames for an 8-frame box. You should not have to feed your bees anymore, and you're going to add your inner and outer cover. Now, some people like to put a queen excluder on at this point. I highly recommend not doing that, and that is because queen excluders can deter the bees from moving up into these boxes. Now, a lot of people have this misconception that bees swarm because there's not enough room in the hive. And so if you just keep on adding more and more honey boxes on top, you'll prevent your bees from swarming off. That is not the case. In order to prevent your bees from swarming off, you need room in the brood chamber where the queen is laying her eggs. doesn't matter how many honey boxes are on top, especially if you have a queen excluder on. So if you don't get around to giving enough room in these boxes, the queen does have the option to move up into these upper honey boxes to lay eggs if you don't have a queen excluder on. If you do have a queen excluder on, what they're going to do is swarm off and you're going to have no queen. Personally, I would rather just lose a couple of honey frames because the queen laid some eggs and keep my queen and prevent my bees from swarming. So once this hive starts filling up this honey super and is drawing out comb, then we can take our queen excluder, if you want to use one, and you put it on top, that second deep box, and you put your honey super back on top. And then finally, the bees may or may not need a second honey super. If you start to see that this box is at least halfway full, then you can add another honey super on top. If your beehive is small, like when you first purchase it, you'll want to put an entrance reducer on. This one that reduces the entrance by about half, and most of the time is sufficient. But later in the year, like early fall, late summer, when there's not so many flowers blooming, or if it's really dry out and that's killed off a lot of the flowers, you'll start to see bees robbing each other. And you'll know robbing because the bees are, one, super cranky, like mad as soon as you get close to them. And also you'll see them stinging each other on top of the beehive and dead bees on the ground. So when that happens, this teeny tiny little entrance over here in the entrance reducer is the one that you're going to want to put on your hive. Because one of the #1 threats to a beehive, and one big reason why some colonies collapse, is because they are attacked by other honeybees. There are a lot of different style beehives, and I recommend to all beginners in the United States to start with a Langstroth style beehive. Wherever you live, start with a standard to your area, because it will make buying equipment and finding help when you're talking to people in your club or local beekeepers a whole lot easier when you start with a standard. And then once you are more experienced, you can move on to any style beehive you like. All right, so now you are ready to go buy your beehives. Your next step is to go to the link in the video description to download my free book, The 7 Steps to Getting Started Keeping Bees. It's short, it's free, and it has a diagram of this beehive along with a checklist for all the things you need. Then you can go to any number of beekeeping supply sites and make your purchases. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and then binge watch all of my YouTube videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.